Hello and welcome to episode 85 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Suzie. I'm your host and I am an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Today I want to do an episode for all of the current Akashic Records readers, the current Akashic Records practitioners that listen to me, and anybody who is feeling into wanting to become an Akashic Records practitioner. And I want to give you 5 tips that I hope will help you as a professional Akashic Records practitioner. If you are one of those people who are feeling into this and you're maybe on the fence a little bit about whether or not this is something that you want to do, but you're really feeling that calling to become an Akashic Records practitioner, I'm going to be doing another level 2 class in October this year, which will have you qualified to do professional Akashic Records readings for 2026. So we'll have the class finished and done. You'll have done your practice sessions by the time we close up just before Christmas. And I'll pop a link into the show notes for one of the podcast episodes that I made where I covered more about that class. And you can take a listen to that and see if that class is something that you feel called to do. Today, I really want to focus on these tips because lots of Akashic Records readers listen to this podcast, which I think is amazing. So thank you for being here. And also I get a lot of Akashic Records practitioners reaching out to me by the DMs, by email with certain questions. And I want to just give you some guidance that I would give to every practitioner based on my own experience as a practitioner and also as a teacher. These are in no particular order of importance, but they do cover some of the main things that people will reach out to me about. So number 1 is try not to compare yourself. Everybody is going to read the Akashic Records differently. And I know lots of people will put readings up onto YouTube so people can see how they read. But what I see a lot is people watching those readings and saying, well, that's different to how I read, and then judging themselves and maybe doubting their own abilities, okay? Please know everybody reads the Akashic Records differently. I see it with my students all of the time. I have students who will specialize in reading for animals, students who will specialize in working in a more mediumistic aspect, students who will really feel more called to work in the clearing aspect of Akashic Records work than the readings. Some people will get lots and lots and lots of past life information through. Other people will get bits of past life information through, but their focus is different, okay? And there's lots of reasons for this, and I do talk about this in level 2. But the main thing I want you to know here today is that you focus on how you read the Akashic Records. You focus on that relationship that you have, and please don't get sucked into comparisonitis. The second tip would be focus on that relationship that you have with the Akashic Records and focus on your own journey, your own process. So really doing your own spiritual work and keeping yourself the clearest channel that you can be for the Akashic Records. Okay, so rather than comparing ourselves to everybody else, we're going to really focus on how do I keep myself the clearest channel. And that might mean I need to spend some time looking at processing my emotions. I might need to really pay attention to the thought processes and what's going on in my brain at this moment in time. But focus on that. So focus on you being the clearest channel that you can be for the records. The third tip is study, but do not forget your practice. The more information and knowledge you have, the more the Akashic Records has to work with. You understanding certain concepts, you having certain terminology is going to help the quality of your readings. But this doesn't mean that you have to have read every book that has ever existed, because that's impossible. Okay? It just means continue on with your study so there's more raw material there. The Akashic Records are always going to find a way to get information to you. So even if there's terminology that you're unfamiliar with, they will find a way of relaying the information that the person that you're reading for needs to have. So please don't panic and think, oh, I have to stop my Akashic Records practice and go off and study for another year. Studying is absolutely going to help. It's going to give you that repository of knowledge and information that the Akashic Records can then use whilst you're channeling the Akashic Records. But don't do that at the expense of your practice. If you are just starting out on your journey and you feel like you want a little bit more practice, do some free readings for people. Really practice. You're going to learn so much more through the practice. I know in my trainings in level 2 and level 3, which are both practitioner level classes, one of the most beneficial things in those classes is once you get started in your practice sessions, then being able to come back and ask me questions, but also discuss it with the community of other students, because you're all starting and you're all talking about things, and it can be really helpful to build up your confidence, to hear other people's experiences, and to have someone to refer to who's been doing this for a while. So study, but don't forget your practice. Number 4 is drop perfectionism. Lots of people who come to work with the Akashic Records have this wounding of perfectionism and this wounding that they want to get everything right. It's a beautiful thing to want to deliver a really good, helpful reading for your clients. That's amazing. But perfectionism is quite insidious. And what it's going to do, if you're aligning to this idea that it has to be perfect or that you have to be perfect, is it's going to really, really knock your confidence, and it's going to put you into a state of contraction. So you're not going to want to do the readings. So if you know that you have this perfectionism program, please do work on deconstructing that program. And my last tip for today, and if you like this episode, I can do another one. I just thought I'd do a quick 5 tips to help those of you who are practitioners listening to this, is to remember your own practice with your own Akashic Records. So you're going to constantly deepen your own relationship to the Akashic Records through your work as an Akashic Records practitioner. But something I see a lot with students and mentees, so people who come to me for mentorship as practitioners, is they will often forget their own practice with the Akashic Records. Okay. Now, it's always a lot easier to read the Akashic Records of somebody else than it is for ourselves. And it's all to do with how much ego we have involved in our own Akashic Records practice. So it can be tempting when you're a practitioner just to focus on doing readings or doing clearings for other people. And that's great. That's your desire to be of service. Okay. But don't forget that your Akashic Records are there as well for you. They're going to help support you as a practitioner. You can go into your own Akashic Records and ask questions like, what spiritual practice do I need to focus on this week or this month? Or what aspect of my business do I need to really work on this week? Okay, so work with your Akashic Records whilst you're a practitioner. So don't just focus on the service to others. Also remember your own, because what you're going to find is the more you're of service and working with the Akashic Records, the deeper and deeper you're going to be able to go into your own Akashic Records. And of course, remember that you have your business Akashic Records as well. So if you're doing this professionally, your business Akashic Records are going to be a great source of help and guidance for you along your professional journey. So I hope you found these tips helpful. If you would like me to do another episode with some more tips, drop it in the comments. Always love to hear your feedback. Thank you so much to everyone who leaves comments, who rates the podcast. This really helps me get this information out to more and more people. So I really do appreciate that. And I shall see you next week for the next episode.